The kitchen smelled faintly of boiled rice and old wood polish. Afternoon light slanted in through the small window above the sink, catching the dust in the air and making it shimmer. My mother sat at the table, elbows tucked close, her hands wrapped around a mug she hadn't touched in minutes. "Sit down, Celoisa," she said without looking at me. The chair legs scraped across the tile as I pulled it out and Saturday. I noticed the steam had long since disappeared from her tea. She was wearing the faded cardigan she kept for days she didn't plan to leave the house, and her hair, usually pinned up neatly, was loose at the sides. "I need to tell you something," she began, her voice careful, almost too even. My stomach tightened. "Okay." She glanced at me once, then looked back down. "You weren't born to me." The words landed heavily, not all at once, but in slow, widening ripples. "What?" "A woman brought you to me, 17 years ago." The kitchen suddenly felt too small. "Brought me? Like adoption?" Her lips pressed together. "It wasn't like that." A floorboard creaked in the hallway. She turned her head sharply, eyes narrowing as if expecting someone to appear. No one did. When she looked back at me, she lowered her voice. "There's more to it, but you need to be careful about asking questions. Not everyone should know this." "Careful?" The word felt strange in my mouth. "Why? Who is she?" She stood abruptly, the legs of her chair thudding against the floor. She moved to the sink, turning on the tap though there were no dishes to wash. Water ran in a steady stream as she stared out the window. That was her way of ending conversations she didn't want to continue. I stayed seated, watching her back, my hands resting on the table. She didn't turn around. "Finally," she said, "some things are better left alone." But the way her shoulders stiffened told me she didn't believe that herself. If my mother hadn't given birth to me, then who had? The answer didn't come from my mother. It came 2 days later, from my Aunt Maribel, though she didn't mean to give it. I was helping her stack boxes in her garage when one of them slipped, spilling old photo albums across the concrete floor. As I crouched to pick them up, a small, square photograph slid out and landed face up. A younger version of my mother stood next to a woman I didn't recognize. Between them, in the woman's arms, was a baby wrapped in a yellow blanket. "That's you," Maribel said before she caught herself. I froze. "That's not Mom holding me." She bit her lip. "No, that's Lorna." "Lorna." Maribel reached for the photo, but I held on to it. "You're..." She stopped, glanced toward the open garage door, and lowered her voice. "She's the woman who gave you to your mother." The name felt heavy, unfamiliar, but I repeated it in my head like it might unlock something. "Why?" Maribel shook her head quickly. "I shouldn't be talking about this. It's not my place." But the way her eyes darted away told me she knew much more. That night, I sat on my bed with the photo under my pillow, unable to sleep. Lorna's face stayed with me, her smile soft but tired, her eyes dark and steady. I tried to imagine her voice, her laugh, the way she might have held me. And then I thought about my mother, telling me to be careful, warning me not to ask questions. If Lorna was the woman who brought me here, what could be dangerous about knowing more? The next morning, I went back to the living room to look for more photos from that time. The shelves were different. A whole row of albums was gone. When I asked my mother where they were, she didn't look up from the sink. "We don't need old clutter," she said. I didn't believe her. The picture from Maribel's garage was hidden now, inside the lining of my school bag. But it wasn't enough. I needed answers. And one question was louder than all the rest. What happened to Lorna after she gave me away? The answer came sooner than I expected, though not in the way I'd imagined. I had gone to the small convenience store 3 blocks from our house to buy bread. Behind the counter was an older man I'd never seen before, thin-framed glasses perched low on his nose. As he rang up my purchase, his gaze lingered. "You're Lorna's girl," he said quietly. My stomach clenched. "Excuse me." He smiled faintly, like he'd just confirmed something for himself. "You have her eyes. She used to come in here every week." Always bought the same thing: milk, bread, and the paper. That was before. He stopped, as if realizing he'd said too much. Before what? I pressed. His eyes shifted toward the door. Before she left town. People said she got into trouble. Real trouble. I wanted to ask what kind, but another customer entered and the man's expression shut down. I left with more questions than I'd walked in with. That night, I couldn't shake the feeling that everyone around me knew more than I did. Maribel, my mother, even this stranger at the store, they all had pieces of a puzzle I'd never been shown. 2 days later, I decided to try Maribel again. I caught her outside hanging laundry and went straight to the point. What kind of trouble was Lorna in? She sighed, glancing toward her house before answering. It's not just trouble, Celoisa. She was involved with dangerous people. Men who made their money in ways you don't want to understand. She owed them, or someone she cared about did. Giving you to your mother, it wasn't a choice made in peace. It was a way to keep you safe. Safe. The word felt like a jagged edge. Safe from what? I asked, but Maribel only shook her head. You don't want to pull on that thread. Your mother has kept you out of it for a reason. Her words should have scared me into stopping. Instead, they made me certain I needed to know more. That night, after my mother went to bed, I searched her room. I felt sick doing it, but my hands moved on their own, checking drawers, lifting folded clothes, looking under the bed. In the bottom of her wardrobe, I found a showbox taped shut. Inside were a few documents, a silver locket with a photo of me as a baby, and a folded letter. It wasn't signed, but I knew it was from Lorna. The handwriting was slanted and deliberate. If you're reading this, it means I had to go. Tell her I love her. Tell her she wasn't abandoned, she was saved. And tell her, if she ever looks for me, she needs to be careful. There are still people who remember. My hands trembled as I put the letter back. Saved. From who? And why were people still watching after all these years? I barely slept. When morning came, I made a decision. If my mother wouldn't tell me, I would find Lorna myself. But before I could start, I spotted something across the street. A dark sedan parked with 2 men inside. I didn't recognize them, but one of them was looking directly at our house. That's when it hit me. Maybe they weren't just watching for Lorna anymore. The dark sedan was gone by morning, but the image of those 2 men stayed lodged in my mind. I didn't tell my mother I'd seen them. I just said I was going to the library and left, only I didn't go there. I took the bus to the next town over, to an address I'd copied from the corner of Lorna's letter. It was a risk, but I couldn't shake the feeling that waiting would be worse. The building was a faded 2-story with peeling paint. I knocked twice. For a long moment, nothing. Then the door opened a few inches and a woman's voice said, "Who is it?" "It's Celoisa." My voice cracked. "I think you knew me. 17 years ago." The door opened wider. Lorna looked older than in the photo, her hair streaked with grey, deep lines at the corners of her eyes, but the shape of her face, the set of her mouth, was unmistakable. Her gaze searched mine, almost hungrily. She let me in without a word. The living room was small but neat, a faint scent of lavender in the air. We sat across from each other, the silence stretching until I couldn't bear it. "Why did you give me away?" I asked. She inhaled slowly. "Because if I hadn't, you'd be dead." The words felt unreal. "From who?" "Men your mother used to be involved with," she said. "Before she met you, she worked for them. Ran errands, handled money. When she wanted out, they made sure she couldn't just walk away. Then she met me." She looked down at her hands. "I had a baby, you. And I was in trouble too. I owed them money. Your mother, she made a deal. She would take you and raise you far from all this, in exchange for covering my debt and making sure they didn't use you against me." My stomach churned. "So you just handed me over?" Tears welled in her eyes. "I thought it would keep you safe. And it did, until now." Her gaze darkened. "Those men? They never fully let go. Some of them are still around, and if they've been watching your house, it's because they know you've started looking for me. I told her about the sedan. She went pale. You can't go back there tonight. They'll follow you. We need to move. It happened fast after that. She grabbed a small duffel bag, stuffed it with papers and cash. We slipped out the back, taking side streets until we reached the bus station. My phone buzzed twice, my mother calling, but I couldn't answer. Not yet. On the bus, Lorna explained the rest. Your mother lied to protect herself as much as to protect you. She never told you because if you went looking, you might lead them to me. But the truth is, she owes them again. And if they can't get to her, they'll take you. The pieces clicked into place, the warning to be careful, the missing photo albums, the sudden tension in her voice. All of it. When we reached the edge of another city, we got off. Lorna turned to me. You have a choice now. You can go back and live the life she made for you, or you can stay with me and we face this together. For a moment, I couldn't speak. My whole life had been shaped by choices I didn't make, by secrets, deals, and debts. But now, for the first time, I had one of my own. I'm not running from the truth anymore, I said. Lorna nodded, a faint smile tugging at her lips. Then we start fresh. We walked into the crowded street, the noise and movement swallowing us up. I didn't know what would come next, whether the men would find us, whether my mother would forgive me for leaving. But for the first time, I felt steady. They had made choices for me my whole life. Now, I was making mine.